For those of you who don't know about Molten Core, I'm quickly going to charge through a bit about what Molten Core is, how it might suit a Hearthstone adventure mode pretty well, and also a little bit about the bosses, cool mechanics that might happen, and also just a couple of things from Molten Core as a World of Warcraft player that I think would be amazing to see in Hearthstone, or perhaps could be a few little juicy tidbits. So Molten Core has got, I think, 8 bosses as far as I recall, as well as Ragnaros. We're going to quickly charge through some of those. This is Lucifron. Ragnaros, you'll be familiar with in Hearthstone as being Gehennas, and the guy is lobbing down, telling insects to die and lobbing damage around absolutely everywhere. But I think the lore background, and I'm no lore master, but effectively Blackrock Mountain sits in the middle of the World of Warcraft continent on the right, and as a World of Warcraft player, basically it was Thorician, it was the Dark Iron Dwarfs, I think it was Thorician who basically accidentally unleashed Ragnaros as a massive elemental, who promptly enslaved his whole race, and then started a big war with the dragon Nefarian, and both of them were warring over Blackrock Mountain. Presumably one of them was eventually going to win and then try and conquer all of Azeroth. So Ragnaros has got several elemental followers, he's got sort of rock followers, he's got sort of fiery followers as well, and there are better sources than me. I'm going to quickly charge through the various different bosses that are in there, because there is a Molten Core raid or adventure mode, you'll probably come across these guys. So this is Lucifron. He's one of the Flame Wakers. There were sort of 4 of them, I think. Lucifron was quite a fun fight. He was the first fight in Molten Core. He had a couple of Flame Protector guards, and basically him and his Flame Protector guards were in the way of Magmadar. Magmadar is a big core hound. You know the core hound, of course, from Hearthstone, that we'll come on to in a second, because he was the second boss. Lucifron basically had a few interesting abilities. These could easily show up in a fight or a card mechanic. Had Impending Doom. You could throw out, it would do 2000 shadow damage to nearby enemies after sort of 10 seconds. And Lucifron was a fight really about decursing and demagicking, something that a lot of people rolling through the raid on Raid Finder for the 10th anniversary in World of Warcraft kind of didn't get. There was a lot of damage would go off on the raid with Impending Doom. You'd have to dispel it. Lucifron's curse would increase the cost of spells and abilities by 100% for 5 minutes, and that needed decursing. So if you didn't demagic, a lot of damage would get done to your raid. If you didn't decurse, then your spellcast would be even slower, and they would cost even more, and you'd use up even more mana. So those kind of things. The fight was effectively, you had to kill his ads, the Flamewalker Protector guards, and then once you killed the Flamewalker Protector guards, you then killed Lucifron. So that could translate quite nicely into a Hearthstone fight. Kill the 2 guards, they could be minions he summons on the table. He could have abilities such as Curse or Impending Doom, and then kill Lucifron himself. So that's Lucifron. Next up we have Magmadar. Now Magmadar, massive giant core hound. Was a bunch of fun. He would effectively fear people. You need to tank him. He did this sort of spitting fire attack that would also do a dot, so it would do damage and then do additional damage every few seconds. Could stack up as well. Then he did a big fear, which would make everyone run away. You'd need to stand around a shaman totem, or you'd need to have people far enough away to make sure that not everyone was feared at the same time. And he also had various attacks, such as lava bomb. He would throw a big hunk of lava and do a whole bunch of damage. So you could see him as being, in World of Warcraft terms, he was more of a tank and spank. I think that could translate quite nicely into a Hearthstone fight. And you can clearly see lava breath, lava bomb or something. You could do a fear, which could maybe stop all of your minions perhaps from attacking, or something for a turn or something like that. So interesting mechanics potentially. Next we've got Gehennas. Gehennas was another one of the Flame Wakers. Gehennas, I think they were all more shadow related. He had like a shadow bolt. He would do a sort of an AoE, a rain of fire as well. So that's sort of a big AoE ability in Hearthstone. Could be something like a blizzard or a holy nova. He could have a spell or an ability that does damage to all of your minions across the board. That's kind of already been done in Curse of Naxxramas. And then also it had a curse that you did which reduced healing effects by 75% unless it was removed, so you had to have people decursing as well. The Flamewalkers had stuns. They could stun people, they could reduce armor, and then they also did an additional piece of damage as well. So this fight was kind of tank the guards away from Gehennas, and then you would effectively have people decursing, and again you'd remove the guards, and then when you remove the guards then you kill Gehennas. So the guards as minions maybe on the table, and then Gehennas you'd perhaps focus down after. Next up in Molten Core you've got Baron Geddon, and oh hang on a second, I've got Baron Geddon, I think it might have been Garr, I can't remember the order, we'll go for Garr first. So Garr was a big earth elemental. He had a whole bunch of littler, smaller minions around him. I can't remember what they were called. I think they were... he had like 8 guards around him, he had 8 other minions, I can't remember their name. But effectively what you had to do with those was that you had warlocks. Warlocks could banish them. And while they were banished, you would effectively have to pick off all of those 8. You could keep them all banished if you had enough warlocks, or if you didn't have enough warlocks then you could kill a couple, banish the rest, kill Garr, and then when you killed Garr you could then go back and pick off all of those additional mobs around him. Garr had, he could dispel buffs from people, he had an ability that sort of slowed people down, reduced movement speed, and then his Fire Swan, that's what they were called, they had an eruption ability, they could explode and do damage, and then it could also immolate, which is like a sort of fire based attack as well. So some interesting things that they could do there. So Garr, you could see Garr, I think it was 6, 7, or it was either 6 or 8, it was an even number, so there was a lot of those Fire Swan around, so you can see Garr hitting the table in Hearthstone, as well as a whole bunch. Obviously you can only have 7 on the board in Hearthstone, so maybe they'd make it 6, with a whole bunch of Fire Sworn. You'd have to kill the Fire Sworn before you could do damage to Garr, and then he could be using abilities over the top of that full board of minions that he starts with. It could be quite an interesting little Hearthstone fight. Moving on to Baron Geddon, familiar to Hearthstone players, obviously loads of control warriors throwing him down for his 2 damage per turn across the entire board of enemy minions, as well as minions on his side of the table and all heroes. 2 damage to everything on the table every turn while Baron Geddon is alive. So that Baron Geddon's card already reflects quite a few of his abilities. It'd be quite cool to see him as a boss. In Molten Core he used to be Ragnaros' right hand man, and then or right hand elemental, right hand fiery thing of doom, before various machinations in the lore meant that he got usurped by Majordomo, who we'll come onto in a bit, as he's the second last boss of Molten Core. What did Geddon do? Geddon in Molten Core had an ability called Inferno, which is what his current Hearthstone card is based on. He would do pulses of damage, and then the pulses of damage would increase, but you needed to try and keep Baron Geddon in. He'd use that Inferno to push people away. He then could burn people's mana unless it was removed, and then the most fun ability that he had, and I could easily see this being a Hearthstone ability, is Living Bomb. So he'd create someone into a bomb, they would blow up in 10 seconds, they take damage, they do damage to everyone around them if they were close to people, they also fly up in the air, and they do damage, get full damage as well when they landed. So you dealt with this in World of Warcraft by making sure that there was a dedicated healer on who was the bomb. You put a shield on them, you'd heal them, and you'd tell the person who got made into the bomb to run away, because if they stood in the middle of everyone else they'd kill everyone else in your team, in your raid, which was inevitably happened once or twice and was fun in retrospect. So yeah, you needed to look after. So Living Bomb, I could easily see that being made into some kind of fun ability. Maybe he casts it on a minion, the minion flies up in the air, falls down on the ground, and then like you know, you could see it flying off the table, maybe falling back onto the table and then dying of damage, or some kind of explosive element around that. So yeah, Baron Geddon, I could see him being quite a fun Hearthstone fighter as well. Next we have Shazzrah. Shazzrah was another Flamewaker. He was sort of more magey, he was more arcane-y. He had Arcane Explosion, like Maves, so he'd do AoE damage to nearby enemies. Again, a curse. People would take more magic damage. That could perhaps be a boss ability that he would have. He could also prevent magics to himself. He could interrupt abilities like a mage, like Counterspell, and then he could also have Blink as well. He could move around from people. So Shazzrah, if he was in Hearthstone, if there was a Molten Core raid, could be quite a sort of mage type fight. You're thinking of magic fights against like mage type bosses in Curse of Naxxramas. Maybe he would play with secrets, that way Shazzrah could use Counterspell. He could also have spells, Arcane Explosion, already a mage spell, so maybe Shazzrah would be quite a magey type Hearthstone fight. You can already see like Counterspell and cards like that could be easily used to kind of replicate how Shazzrah plays in Molten Core. Next up, the Sulfuron, or the Sulfuron Harbinger, I think, if you go for his full name. Sulfuron has 4 priest guards, so if you in Hearthstone make those 4 priest guards into 4 minions on the table, that could be pretty good. Sulfuron himself, how did it work? The Sulfuron guards could heal mobs, including themselves. So the Sulfuron guards, if you didn't deal with the ones who healed, or you didn't interrupt their heals, then they'd heal each other and you'd never be able to finish the fight. So the way that the fight worked was that you got rid of the healers first out of the 4 Sulfuron Harbingers, the Sulfuron guards, and then once you'd killed all of the Sulfuron guards, you then killed Sulfuron Harbinger himself, which could work quite nicely as a Hearthstone fight too. You can imagine you could quite easily imagine the mobs healing each other. You could have minions on the table in Hearthstone that were healing each other. As for Sulfuron himself, the abilities that he used off the top of my head, plumbing the depths of memory there a little bit. So Sulfuron, I think he was more, he had a shadow word pain. He had sort of an ability that reduced people's attack power. He could buff himself for double attack damage. I think it was more attack speed and he did more damage, so maybe Sulfuron will have a hero ability that increases his damage for a turn, or means that he does double the damage or something for a turn. And he had a nasty knockdown and a few AoE attacks as well, so he had lots of things that would affect people in an AoE kind of way. So Hearthstone fight wise, kill the Sulfuron guards. The Sulfuron guards may well have a heal ability that heals each other as they go, and then kill Sulfuron himself. Almost there, 3 more bosses to go. So next up we have Golemagg the Incinerator. Golemagg was a huge stony giant, as you can see here, and he had a couple of core hounds next to him too. 2 core rages, I think they were called. So you could basically with this fight, Golemagg was a huge tanky boss. He did loads of damage. What you needed to do was tank the 2 core hounds. You destroyed the 2 core hounds. You needed to keep the core hounds far away from each other. Because if you had them too close to each other, I think they would buff each other. Golemagg would, or if you didn't keep the core hounds away from Golemagg, he would actually buff them. So Golemagg, as a Hearthstone fight, probably hit the table with 2 core rages. You'd need to kill them probably before Golemagg, perhaps. Golemagg did a big stacking ability that did damage over time. The more stacks there were, the more damage you do. He'd do a big pyroblast nuke, and then when you got him down to low health, he'd start doing global sort of area of effect damage, sort of a big earthquake, hurting everyone around him. He'd effectively enrage and attack a huge big amount faster. So the core dogs themselves, they sort of had a big damage attack as well, and I think you had to kill the dogs perhaps at the same time. Oh no, the dogs can't actually die, sorry. You just need to keep them away and make sure that you can juggle them so that you can actually kill Golemagg. So yeah, that could translate quite now into a Hearthstone fight. You know, you can't actually kill the core hounds, but you need to take them out. You need to keep them occupied while you're killing Golemagg, and then the core hounds could probably just die at the end. 2 bosses to go. Majordomo Executus. Majordomo Executus, sorry for the picture, it's the only one I could grab. Ragnaros' sort of right hand assert Baron Geddon. Now he had 8 additional adds. So remember, of course, on a Hearthstone board at the moment you can only have 7 minions on the board, so you wouldn't be able to have at the moment, unless they change things a bit perhaps, all 8 of Majordomo's adds, but he had 4 healers and 4 guards, so there were 9 enemies in total. But basically if you dealt with all the healers and all the guards, Executus would submit, so you didn't actually have to kill him. So in this, if this was a Hearthstone fight, Executus, as per the World of Warcraft fight, could be unkillable, and you'd have to find a way of dealing with the guards. Basically you'd have to off-tank Majordomo in the Warcraft fight. The elites, the sort of the guards, the 4 out of the 8 guards, they do a bunch of damage. They had the ability to shield themselves. They had 2 different kinds of shield. One of them would reflect damage, melee damage, and the white shield would have a chance to reflect spells. So if perhaps it's got a purple shield, you couldn't attack it directly. If it's got a white shield, then you'd have to perhaps not cast spells at it. So potential for a really interesting Hearthstone boss battle there. Loads of interesting abilities. Obviously those are quite complex to translate to Hearthstone, but if you had varying different kinds, obviously you've got Divine Shield in Hearthstone at the moment. I don't know if you could have different shields. Maybe they could just be given Divine Shields that turned on and off, or something similar. The healers, the 4 out of 8 healers that surrounded Majordomo, they had the same shield, so they could potentially reflect spells, they could potentially reflect physical damage, and then they also did random shadow belt damage as well, and naturally they healed not only other healers but also the elites. So in Warcraft you had to deal with the healers, then deal with the elites. You could sheep some healers, kill some, you could crowd control the healers in various ways and then kill the elites. But either way, the goal of the fight was to get rid of all 8 mobs. And make sure you could control them. So 40 of you controlling 8 mobs was always very interesting, as well as people not getting the shields right, attacking the shields and killing themselves. For the spell reflection shield, you could actually sheep yourself if you're a mage by accident, which was quite funny. Again, funny in retrospect. If you're winning a big raid fight and suddenly you got sheeped, then that wasn't so fun, but there could be so much fun there. Interesting fight. Sorry, just saying a quick hello there. So there is Majordomo, and then last but not least we have Ragnaros. So Ragnaros, the boss of everything, obviously known as Ragnaros. Ragnaros is a fight. He already exists in Hearthstone. You could quite easily, I think, replicate his various abilities. So Ragnaros at the moment in Hearthstone, he's an 8/8. He does 8 random damage a turn to a random enemy, and that's effectively meant to sort of reproduce his kind of, I think it was like a Wrath of Ragnaros. Oh no, it's Hammer of Ragnaros. So he just attacked a random player, I think it was with a mana bar, and did a massive knockback. He'd throw up lava splash as well, that would randomly do damage in an area as well. If you're close to a lava, you know, there were lava flows on the floor, so if you were close to those, it would do damage to you. You need a lot of fire resistance for Ragnaros. As well as sort of various debuffs, he would occasionally go under the lava and he'd summon sort of mobs, 8 sort of mobs. They were like little mini Baron Geddons, like Flame Suns or something that you had to kind of control. So Ragnaros had various phases. You'd have to deal with those, you'd have to deal with his flames. So Hearthstone wise, you could equally replicate that somehow. He could disappear, he could perhaps become invulnerable, and then suddenly the board could fill with Sons of Flame, and you could have to deal with the Sons of Flame. When you've killed all the Sons of Flame, then Ragnaros becomes killable again, for example. He had loads of abilities: Lava Splash, Hammer of Ragnaros, Wrath of Ragnaros. Any of those could easily be a hero ability for Ragnaros as being the final boss in Molten Core as well. So that is our little summary of the news, or should I say speculation. Let me just say again, this is all speculation. It's all based off some notes in a Hearthstone patch that's just gone live. However, I'm sure we'll find out a lot more when Blizzard make their announcements in early March 2015 at PAX to see whether we're getting a new Hearthstone adventure mode and whether it is indeed going to be Molten Core, as we've been speculating for the past few minutes. So just to finish up, showing a few other reasons to believe and cool things that I just think would be really awesome. Remember, of course, there has been or is a World of Warcraft trading card game that exists or ran for a while. I'm not 100% sure whether it's finished up or not, but there was a Molten Core expansion, and that's the art for it there. Courtesy, I think it was Upper Deck. Very, very cool. You can see Ragnaros on the front there. And just to share a little bit of remembering various bits and bobs, here are some of the cards that were in this expansion. So you can see the Core Hound and similar things. It was a good card game. I actually used to play it a few years ago, and there have already been some cards existing. There's already art existing and some various fun things there. So again, reasons to believe there's some really cool, as with everything in World of Warcraft to be fair, there's some very, very cool existing artwork. Whether they make some new art or repurpose it, but it's already been thought out and done. And last but not least, something really, really cool that I'd very much hope gets introduced or used again. In Molten Core, there were, because it was one of the first raids, there were some really cool class quests and weapons that you could obtain. They never got around to doing this for other classes in the early phase of World of Warcraft, but initially in Molten Core had a priest epic, a specific priest epic, and a specific hunter epic. Now the priest epic was benediction. It had two different forms. You could change it by clicking it into, as you can see there on use, into anathema. And you had basically a holy healing version and a shadow priest version, and then you had Rokdalar and Lokdalar. I think it was the bow and the staff, which were for the hunter. Now each of these you needed to get a specific loot drop from Molten Core. For benediction, I think it was the Eye of Divinity that dropped off Majordomo. You then had to get a world drop called the Eye of Shadow, and if you took the two and did a quest in the Eastern Plaguelands, and if you failed it, you had to wait 24 hours before you could retry it. So it was the real first like epic quest, and I remember getting my benediction as a holy priest back in vanilla World of Warcraft at something like 2 in the morning with another priest who happened to be doing the quest at the same time. You had to go and do sort of like a memory flashback and try and save peasants fleeing from Stratholme, I think. But yeah, it involved a lot of technicality, using sort of oils of immolation, trying to decurse, depoison, heal lots of very weak mobs, NPCs, sort of peasants who were running around. So two things. One, the quest was absolutely awesome. And the hunter quest, although I never did a hunter, was similarly epic. You had to sort of run around, kite various mobs, and it really gave you a massive sense of it was a big quest chain, and waiting for the random drop, which was really fun. But the two interesting things are, one, these existed in Molten Core. They could be very easily changed into weapons. Hunters could get a new weapon like Rokdalar or Lokdalar. Not only would that fit in really well with the Molten Core theme, but it would be quite cool. And now here's an interesting thing. Now the second thing, which again total speculation, but could be really cool to see in future. At the moment in Hearthstone, only certain classes have weapons. And they tend to be melee weapons for the warrior and the rogue, the paladin and the hunter. But in World of Warcraft, don't forget that a bunch of classes, actually, in fact everyone, can equip sort of a weapon or something in some form or another. Now obviously they're not melee weapons. All of the existing weapons at the moment are melee, but don't forget that priests have staves, mages can take staves or daggers and offhands, and also druids can take staves as well. So here's a bit of speculation for you. What if additional weapons got introduced in this adventure mode? What if benediction got introduced and priests could have weapons? That would be absolutely crazy. How could it work? Benediction, it could, if you had a benediction version, then that could do additional, it could increase the amount of your healing. It could be a very simple mechanic. You could attack for some damage with it, or maybe all it would do, it would have a certain amount of durability, and every time you healed it would increase your healing by a certain amount. Possible. Anathema, it could be a direct attack weapon, and it could be it could have some kind of ability that increased the damage that you did. Because remember, we've already got shadow form that priests can use to do damage with, which effectively changes your healing hero ability into a shadow hero ability. What if benediction somehow automatically put you in shadow form, or buffed your shadow form, or something similar? Of course that would then mean that all other kinds of classes could potentially have weapons as well. So quite unlikely. I think that would be a big balance and testing thing to bring in. It would be a lot easier not to introduce weapons for new classes, but Molten Core certainly gives Blizzard the ability to experiment with introducing weapons for priest if they'd like to. So there you go. How's that for some mad speculation? So that is our little news update for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're on YouTube, do like, comment, subscribe, let us know what you think, what we can do more for you. If you've you can always find us at twitch.tv/Felcraftcast. We go live, if you take a look at this column on the left, we go live Monday through Friday generally at those times in the bottom left, and we'll always tweet on @Felcraftcasts on Twitter. Do check out the rest of our stuff on YouTube. You can see us youtube.com/Felcraftcasts, or you can click the link in the top right to subscribe. You can click the link in the top left to take a look at our regular series that we do. We also do 2-minute deck guides and a whole bunch of other stuff. So thank you so much for joining us for our news update. Hopefully catch you live on stream or in the comments on YouTube, perhaps even on Twitter. This is Felcraft, and I've been Hammy. Take it easy.